It's the Monday Morning Motivator with Magooch. Good morning, and welcome to the Monday Morning Motivator meeting. Today's not actually Monday because we're recording this one ahead of time. I have a very special guest with me, my friend, Anthony Veneziale.
Hey, Jess.
Hi.
Hello.
All the way across the other side of the country. So we're going to, Anthony's our guest today, so we're going to spend most of the time talking about his awesome company and presentation skills and how you could really rock your demos and presentations so you're not super boring like all of your competitors. Cool? So before we get started, take a moment to grab those intentions. It's the beginning of the week. Remember why the heck you're doing this in the first place? Because you're going to run up against challenges and things you got to change. And the only way that you're going to have the strength to get through that is to remember why you're doing it in the first place. So just remind yourself, because you can get busy in your business and forget what your big why is. And only you know what that is. All right. On to metrics. What were your numbers last week? Anthony? No, just, I'm going to put you on the spot. No, just kidding.
Well,
so metrics. Every week we make sure we're just keeping ourselves accountable as far as numbers are concerned and making sure that we're putting in the fuel to get out the results that we want. At the end of the day, you know, sales is very emotional. It's very relationship driven, but if we're not getting results, so we really need to look back at what part of that funnel's broken, and the numbers will tell us that and keep us accountable to ourselves. Do you guys, how do you use metrics in your business? What kind of things do you track and make sure that you're reaching your targets?
in my company, which is called Speechless Inc., we have something called OKRs, and I'm sure you're very familiar with them. They're objectives and key results.
Mm-hmm.
And we have company OKRs, and then we have department OKRs, and then we have individual OKRs. So each of those drive back towards the top, right? So what is the company trying to do? We're trying to put Speechless in the hands of every single person. That is our major goal. And what is our mission? Our mission is to help people to be themselves and to be heard. So then that sort of trickles down. I'm also a relationship manager. Those are some of my OKRs. How do I make sure I reach X amount of dollars?
Mm-hmm.
So my OKR sales quota for Q1 and Q2, it's ambitious, right? You're trying to go further than what you actually can do. And this is we work a lot with Google. We work a lot with Salesforce, with Adobe. We have very big clients. And so we've taken some of their successful tools, and OKRs being one of them. So my objective was way out of the park. I was aiming for about $250,000 in sales for Q1.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I brought in about 175. So this was a big jump. I was never going to reach that. The goal is to try to reach about 60% of your OKRs. That doesn't mean 60% of 175,000. That means 60% of all the OKRs I have in front of me. I also am supposed to be making 12 videos this quarter for our online, and we're going to be offering a service that's a new service for clients going forward where they can get more information from our team around they're about to go into a meeting and they want to remember X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what your podcast does, right? So, okay, how am I going to take these lessons with me? So we want to have something that's a little bit easier and accessible to them online / on their app or whatever it might be.
Cool.
So those also fall into my OKRs, and I'm trying to get through as many of my OKRs as possible. So that's roughly, what I'm looking at. And we're about to do our wrap-up session this Friday on our OKRs from Q1.
Awesome. So everyone calls them something different. Some people call them a lot of KPIs is also a common term, at least in the sales. Key performance indicators, quotas, goals, objectives, targets, whatever you call it. It's all the same thing as long as you've got something that you're setting your mind on, and then you could create a roadmap to get there. And we get a little woo-woo here, Anthony, too, because we find that sometimes once you set your targets, there's targets you'll set and you won't know how to get there. But when you start setting intentions, your mind and your actions subconsciously, everything drives towards reaching that without you even knowing that it's happening. So some things will happen and you'll reach a target and say, well, I didn't even know, I didn't think that was going to happen. Or I thought that was planned for 6 months ago. And next week the opportunity comes up. So
absolutely.
if you hadn't decided that was an intention, you wouldn't recognize the opportunities coming into your lap, you know?
I have one of those that I can give you a hard example of right now.
Awesome.
So another one of my OKRs is to do, because I'm the chief creative officer of Speechless, I also have to sort of be a brand ambassador and I have to perform on a big stage. And one of my bucket list goals was to speak at TED, which is obviously a very big conference that happens every year. And the main stage at TED is a very exclusive place. I've done a couple of TEDx talks. And this was something I thought maybe in 5 years' time, I'd like to try to get on, and that was in my OKRs. Like this year, at least make some connections to try to get towards speaking at TED.
Uh-huh.
Well, next week I'm flying to Vancouver because I'm actually speaking at TED this year.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I guess
so
you'll be on my TED app on my phone.
Nice. So having that mental picture, as you said, absolutely. I believe in that 100%, that visualizing something in your mind's eye well before you are there helps set a lot of gears in motion that get you toward that big goal or that big unexpected marker.
Awesome. So guys, okay, if you're not convinced, I know you're convinced, but for some reason, some of you still aren't doing it. Please keep track of Anthony, you wouldn't even know. I've worked with very large companies that don't keep track of numbers very well. So I'm like, how'd you get this far? Imagine if you did. It's like, sometimes the more money you have, it like allows you to kind of get, lazy in certain spots. But you could fuel yourself forward too if you don't drop those things that you knew you needed when you first started. Awesome.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was an epistemology minor in college. That was 4 years of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And all the guys would be like arguing these like philosophical, of course we just read every philosopher, but mostly focused on epistemology, which is, for you guys, it's the study of knowledge or how we know things or how we don't know things. So I'll stop there. They're arguing like, when you close the door, does the hallway disappear behind it, right? And we'll go on for an hour. I'm like, you guys, it's been 4 years and we've been having the same argument and with different circumstances, and we know at the end is we don't know what we don't know. So can we just cut to that?
We can agree to that.
Can we just cut to the end? It's like, and then we know the end. Okay. So, okay. This is my scene change. Yeah. Because I usually do these YouTube live and there's really no flexibility with any kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about Speechless, and I brought Anthony on because he launched an awesome product that helps all kinds of people improve their public speaking skills in a totally fun way. And so I wanted to bring him on to talk about it because obviously one of the modules that we teach in the sales launch code, and anyone who has to sell anything needs to know how to communicate their ideas effectively and not boring in a non-boring way. But in an interesting way. And his product addresses that. So I wanted you guys to, get an insider story behind Speechless and what they do and how it all came about, and then give you a super special discount so that you can start applying what Anthony's going to share with us today right away. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. So Anthony, we know each other from high school.
Yes.
We were in drama club together.
Yes.
And here we are both teaching like presentations.
Thanks to Marge Anderson.
I know. Do you know Libby's marrying Marge's son? Libby, Emma. You might not remember.
No.
Yes, they're getting married next month.
Inside. I love
So,
this.
yeah, I was like, you're the luckiest girl in the world. Your mother-in-law is Margie Anderson. And Margie Anderson. So anyway, how did you, so the last time we were connected was when you were in New York doing your improv thing, and you were with Freestyle Love Supreme doing freestyle rap, which is kind of freestyle rap, which is kind of when I dropped out of that. Could no longer be of any contribution to what you're doing. Is way beyond. And a little celebrity was in that group or came out of that group. Your friend Lin-Manuel Hamilton. So take me from there to here. Whoa. And well, okay, no, it's a long time. You don't have to give me all the gory details.
I'll give you the shortcut.
The shortcut of how that relates to where you are now in the professional world and helping people do their thing.
Well, if we look at Freestyle Love Supreme, which is an improvised freestyle rap concert, it basically relies on a couple of major principles, one of them being improv thinking. So what is improv thinking? We do it all the time. Improv thinking is the moments where we are informed by the present moment and we allow ourselves to be swayed and or influenced by something that happens that we didn't know was going to happen. And then we might also even be changed by that which came after. So improv thinking is this very specific part of your brain as well. It's the medial lateral prefrontal cortex. So this is a part of your brain that when you are sort of in the zone, and you might have heard this phrase before, you're like, I'm crushing it, or my gosh, everything else has disappears.
And flow, yeah.
And a lot of people now
feeling yourself, yeah.
Flow, and so creative flow and or flow state is something that is being touted. But how do we get to flow state? That's sort of the major question, because we have this other really, really strong part of our brain, which is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, a little bit further back. And that is your judging brain, right? That's the part of your brain that sometimes can be really hyper aware and hyperactive, especially when you're in these sales scenarios, which is, oh God, I'm messing it up. Or why did I wear this pink shirt today? They're going to have some judgment on me. So it's your judging brain. And when that is really loud, you are less in your flow. You are not as quite tapped into your flow state. So at Speechless, the reason why Freestyle Love Supreme correlates to Speechless is that we were trying to bring some area of joy to this field of hip hop. Now, hip hop was amazing. It's one of my favorite things of all time. And I was a part of an improv community in New York. But the improv community in New York looked a lot like me. And I think that's always problematic. It was very white. And so I wanted to use a vernacular that opened the door and was more inclusive and brought more people into the journey of what I thought was the power of improv, which is to your flow state. And so I started doing it with Lin-Manuel Miranda, Chris Jackson, and then the list goes on from there. Daveed Diggs, James Monroe Iglehart. These are all very accomplished people in the world. Utkarsh Ambudkar. The skill set that you acquire from improv thinking, I think, helps you to take big, bold risks. And what is Hamilton other than a big, bold risk?
For sure.
So that same core game mechanic of taking a bold risk because you're in a flow state is what is under the hood of Speechless as well. So about 7 years ago, my buddy Sammy Wiegand was working at a company called Zynga, speaking of core game mechanics. And they are a big, giant game company. They develop Farmville was kind of their big first game that crushed the market. And Sammy sat through meeting after meeting after meeting of PowerPoint presentations where people just didn't know what they were talking about. And so he said, why are we pretending like we don't know what we're talking about when we can actually just admit and say, I really don't know what I'm talking about. So we wanted to have a fun way to bring funny to business. That was sort of the very beginning of Speechless. And it started out as a live show. So this live show was where we would put together slides and the presenters would have no idea what was going to be on the slides. And they'd spin a wheel and land on a topic like fundraising for a new app, or quarterly reports, or toast at a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And then the audience would give them a suggestion, and then they would have to give that talk with slides they've never seen before.
That's awesome.
It's almost like everyone's nightmare of having what you're about to say, right? And unlike you and I, most people are very afraid of public speaking. And I think you and I aren't, because we've created a neural network around joy of performance. So Speechless is helping to mitigate those waters for sales teams, for CEOs, for C-level people, for entrepreneurs, for engineers. How do we make accessible to them this concept of performing because they are presenting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to present, if you're going to talk in front of a room, even in a meeting, a one-on-one, you should be ready in the way that an actor prepares to get on stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those are really strong neural networks that get created around a process. So that's what we do with our company. We go into these major corporations. We get them ready for all their major talks. We have trained, over 25,000 people to date now.
Awesome.
We have worked with over 200 companies. Last year alone, we ran about 300 workshops. And now we developed this game, which has sort of boiled down all of those salient points. And that is our teaching methodology as well. It's something called POINT, P-O-I-N-T, presence, originality, inclusion, narrative, and transformation.
I like that it's pink.
Oh, thank you.
Bold.
So yes, and that's the other part of this as well. There's definitely an underserved community in the tech world, which is women in tech. So how do we help encourage a more equitable voicing inside of that tech community? That's a big part of our mission statement as well. And how do we also allow that to be something authentic? So it's not about using traditional leadership qualities, which is kind of the Toastmasters take on things, right? Toastmasters comes from a very stilted, vestigial male point of view. And it's very much about dominating a room. There's even another company called Own the Room. And that's not necessarily copacetic with everyone's style. Mm-hmm. So for us, this is a much more adaptogenic approach, meaning it allows it to fall authentically on the person who is interacting with it. Mm-hmm. So if someone is, generally personalities break into these 4 different molds.
Okay.
And this is sort of something that's done through millennia, right? And you might have studied this in epistemology as well, which is, there's let's say the Qing dynasty of China, it broke down into 4 major components of earth, fire, wind, and water. Mm-hmm. And those 4 elements helped someone to sort of know what kind of a person this was, right? So fire, that's a very aggressive person, right? That's someone who's, and it was then in the early 1900s, it was broken down into these, by the person who created Wonder Woman, oddly enough, into what we nowadays kind of
controversial man.
Yes, very. Which we kind of now break into these categories that we use to help people at work understand each other, right? So it's dominant personality, and the words have changed a little bit throughout the years to be a little bit more politically correct. Submissive personality, and sometimes people think of those as introverts and extroverts. Now, each of those people have an authentic point of view and a way that they enjoy being or learning or speaking. So how do we make sure that this can fit all of those people? And it's not just forcing someone to be the dominant person in the room, if that's not their leadership quality, if that's not their actual intrinsic style.
Right.
So we love all of these elements of Speechless because it allows you to choose what best suits and works for you, but it starts to give you a parallel operating system that you can make choices towards. Not funneling you to make you someone who you're not. And that's a part of why the box is pink.
Yeah.
Because it's playful, it's fun, and feminine in some ways.
And creative. And so there were a couple things you mentioned that I would love to elaborate a little bit on.
Yeah.
One, you mentioned the preparedness that an actor does before they get on stage and how that could help you in a presentation? What are some of those things, like one or two things you do?
Great. Let's have a little fun. Let's play. So you and I are going to do some of them right now. So
Okay.
we think that it's important to have a process in place before you do something. This is exactly like what major accomplishing athletes do, right? You see a batter in a batter's box. They don't just kind of stand there and hope for the best. They step out, they adjust their wristbands, generally 2 or 3 times, depending on that person's kind of like tics. And they swing away, and then they step and dig.
Scrape the ground, they do the thing with their feet on the dirt.
They might hit the dirt off of their shoe, whatever it might be, but they generally have a prescribed process that they go through. They also are in the batter's box beforehand, and you see them doing all kinds of warm-ups before they get out there. Same exact thing. We need to do a couple things that start triggering in our mind that we're about to be in a performance moment, just like they're about to swing the ball at the bat at the ball as it's coming towards the catcher. So we try to do at least 3 or 4 things that can be helpful for somebody. You and I will do 1 or 2 right now. This is something called shakeout.
Takeout?
Shakeout. Like
shakeout.
Yeah, exactly. I'm shaking like a tree. So we are going to use our extremity of each limb. So in this instance, it's my right wrist, and it's the snapping of my hand off of my right wrist. And I will count up to the number 8 on the right wrist, count up to the number 8 on the left, then do the same thing with my right foot and my left foot. And then we cut it in half and do 4. And then we cut that in half and do 2, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, and then repeat 1, 1, 1, 1. And
this is very familiar.
Yes, right? Totally. And at the end of all that, you're then going to hit a pose of, I just sold the deal, right? Whatever that pose is, right? But don't think about your pose right now. Yeah, let the pose occur to you. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, darn it, how do I not think about the pose? Here are a couple techniques that we sometimes use and or have learned from other processes like meditation. If you find yourself divorcing yourself from the moment and thinking about the upcoming moment, whatever that thought is, I have to hit the funny pose, or I have to be clever, or I have to be right, tie that idea or concept or image to a red balloon that has helium in it.
Okay.
See the string, attach around it, and then watch the image and the balloon go off into the distance, and then arrive back at the moment.
That is awesome. Because before we actually do it, so that is what I recommend when you're in front of a client. The tendency is that instead of listening, you're thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to say. They're in the middle of asking a question and you're thinking of the rebuttal when you haven't fully heard the question or asked follow-up questions and really listened, right? So we're actually not in the moment. And then often whatever that thing was we thought was like the perfect response, and we finally come out and say it, it was like, it was totally wrong because we weren't listening. We were thinking.
Totally.
So how to take out your logical, that thinking part of your brain while you're one-to-one faced with a client, but at the same time have access to, obviously you need access to information. I guess that's where the practice and the discipline comes in, right? Because we're not saying like go in totally unscripted, not knowing anything. We're saying like know it so well that you don't have to think about it, that you could pluck it out whenever from your toolbox whenever you need it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And also don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't have the answer to that right now.
Right.
Be honest about what your limitations and capacities are. There's a lot of fear, I think, is ultimately what you're saying here. You're afraid that you're going to lose the sale, or you're afraid that you're not making a connection, opposed to deep listening and being in the moment. And so now what we're going to do is this playful thing to help put us in the right mind frame. These playful exercises actually get you more to your medial prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
So here we go. Let's do a shakeout. Say the numbers nice and loud. And you can say those numbers in any order you want. Here we go.
Okay. In any order?
You'll see. I'll do it with you.
That's really going to mess me up. Okay.
Here we go. And 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 8, 7, 2, 3. 1, 8, 7, 6, 8, 4, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 5, 7, 6. 1, 2, 5, 7, 6, 2, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 1, 1, 1.
1. What's the pose? I just sold it.
That was mine.
Great. Nice. And breathe into it. Breathe into that pose. Take a nice deep breath into the nose. Out through the mouth. Yeah. Great. That's what it's going to feel like at the end of this meeting.
Okay.
Cool. So that's one. That's called a
Oh,
shakeout.
so got it.
Yeah,
you're visualizing kind of, you're putting it in your body, but so it's like calisthenics, like
that's
the
right.
memory in your body is.
That's right.
So what you like you're naturally going to be inclined to get that result because your body wants to be there, right?
Yep.
Like your muscle memory wants to go there type. Yeah. So you got to do it a lot. You got to do it over and over.
Yeah. This is something you should do every single
get in your bones.
This is something you should do every time that you work on your sales pitch.
Yeah.
And again, you're creating that. Yes, you're creating that process. You're creating a neural network that not only is muscle memory, but
and make sure you have a lucky pen that always gets the sales.
Great. Whatever it is that kind of like. All right, cool. So that was one. Here's
That's
two.
Awesome.
This is something called lion mouse, and it's going to be super fun and scary. Now, it's maybe easy for you and I because we've been doing performance, but for a lot of people, this is something that's really hard for them. Here's what lion looks and sounds like. Everything is as wide and as open as possible, and your tongue is sticking out. That might be something your parents told you could never do.
Yeah.
So here we go. Lion looks and sounds with a roaring noise with it. So here we go. Lion. Great. And now the opposite of that is mouse. You're going to scrunch all of your facial features into one finite point. And you're going to put your little hands on your whiskers and you're going to make a squeaky, 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 squeaky.
I hope no one has screenshots this.
I'm hoping they do. So that squeaky thing is this sort of falsetto. It's that high head voice.
Okay.
And you're going to be oscillating between the lion, that low coming from your diaphragm, to the squeaky, high head voice.
Okay. Nadia, this one's for you.
Great. So here we go, back and forth between the two, and lion first. And now back to lion. Yes. Almost all end exactly where you are, which is I'm laughing.
Oh, that feels good.
Yes. And it also warms up your jaw, which is where most people hold tension in there. This is something that is, and often you'll go into a meeting and you'll be so concerned, you're locked off. And TMJ is a real thing that a lot of salespeople suffer from. So this helps to loosen that up, because when you walk in, you want to actually be available. You want to show that you're ready to be changed by the people in the room. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for you to be able to have a conversation. Sales is almost always, as we know, a conversation and a relationship building moment.
Right.
You go in, who's going to want to be friends with that person?
Right.
Oh.
And sometimes it's like fake it till you make it. Like just make sure your mouth's a little parted at all times, until it becomes. And I tell people like smile, like just smile as much as you can. But like, even if it's not natural to begin with, like your muscles get used to being in that position and it makes you more like welcoming.
So those are two quick things. And a third thing would be a tongue twister. Just have fun with words, because right now you've warmed up your voice and you've warmed up your face and you've gotten some oxygenated blood flow to your extremities, which helps you to actually be smarter. It helps you to stay more aware. That's what shakeouts tertiary benefits are. But now we actually often will have to speak in the room. And so it might be fun for you to do a tongue twister. Do you know any tongue twisters?
Yeah.
What's one
Red
that you
leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, how many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick?
Great. And now you did the sort of end result of tongue twister, which is to go as quickly and with as much skill as possible. That's wonderful. But oftentimes when you go into a sales room, you have to frame the concepts first. So we're going to start nice and slow, because framing is a super important part of storytelling and also of sales. You've got to really let them know exactly what they're in store for. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. Let's just start there, as super slow and over enunciating as possible. Here we go together. 1, 2, 3.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Yeah, and it gets a little harder, doesn't it? That was hard for some reason.
Yeah, you don't realize there's so many sounds in there.
Yeah. And now let's go a little bit faster, but just with that phrase. So we'll set a different tempo. So now Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. And now let's go a little bit faster. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. And now we're going to go as fast as we can. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. And I'll do that 3 times in a row as fast as you can. Go for it.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Yes. And again, it ends here with playfulness and with joy.
Okay.
And now what we would end up doing is putting 3 different emotional states to that phrase. So I might ask you, say that same exact phrase, but this time all of your best friends just threw you a surprise party. Go.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. And you don't have to repeat it 3 times if you want to.
Sorry. I went overboard. I over-deliver, Anthony.
That's what we love about it. Now you just saw a ghost in your room.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. And then finally, you made the sale. You actually signed the deal.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Great. So those words, while they were the same, conveyed completely different feeling with each different emotion that you matched to it. That's also reminding the person who's about to go in that room to stay emotionally available.
Cool.
To have differentiation of feelings that then informs the words you're about to say in a different way.
But it's not okay to have emotions in corporate B2B sales.
That's right. You must be a sales robot because everyone likes selling to a robot. Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. That sale of $299 per month.
I know a big part of what we teach is the psychology of selling, that sales is emotional first and logical second. And Absolutely. But that's now more easily adopted than it used to be 10 years ago teaching that. But then the question is, how do you apply that in a sales situation? Because one thing to know it, it's another thing to apply it. Sales is a transference of emotion from one person to another. It's like, what do your clients need to feel in order to buy? And then how do you transfer that to them? So often you'll get salespeople, they are robo salespeople because they're delivering information. It's like hitting the button on an information kiosk, right. Especially online demos, right? Where they know what they're going to say and they're rolling through it. And especially if you can't see the other person on the other side of the line, you're not picking up those signals like, I lost them. Like they're totally not interested right now. You're just talking. You're like, as long as they don't bring up any objections, I'm doing good. It's like, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because again, you're playing it safe. You are trying to understand what success looks like. And for you, success looks like getting through the talk. Right. Right. So for a lot of salespeople, it's like success for me is just getting through it all because I'm terrified of doing this.
Right. Right. Even though you have a big mission behind it. A lot of people I work with, Anthony, that are in our circle here are like, they're mission-driven entrepreneurs. So above all else, what they started was to solve a problem, social, economic, environmental problem through technology or another means, or sometimes that's even in the form of like one-to-one coaching and consulting. We're not, necessarily product driven, but that's what they all have in common as far as their mission. But then there's like this roadblock that comes up when it comes to selling. Yeah. That now that somehow it's when their mission is what's going to get them right through to the close the sale, right? That passion from the mission can drive right through, but somehow this roadblock goes up and they go, oh, now I'm selling. Yeah. Like all of a sudden, all that's gone. Why do you think that is?
I think that there's a lot here to do with the societal norms around what it means to be professional. Mm-hmm. So quite often there's this concept of here's my work self and here's my home self. And we have bifurcated our own being. Alarms. So when that permeates our society about like, this is work appropriate and this is home appropriate, will have a divorce of one's authenticity.
Right.
And lucky for us, this kind of group that we're working with, sometimes it's a little bit closer to the vest, right? It's a little bit, those Venn circles aren't so far apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our job to help them understand what that middle ground is. How much of their talk, their sales, and how much of them can they put into it? And that's
Cool.
us where we started. That's why Speechless started with these two Venn circles together, because we're looking for that middle purple area.
That's awesome. I think something else you said too about along the lines of characters on a stage, getting ready for a performance and how an actor would prepare, but also that concept of when you're on stage, you're nervous, like, you know, how do you get over nerves of anything, of being on stage in any way, especially in acting or, you know, performance of any kind? It's to focus on the other person, right? Like acting's all about influencing someone else to do something, right? So if you're not focused, you know, that naturally forces you to focus on them, not yourself, right? But that tape that's going on, that negative chatter of that judgmental mind you said, where you're like, why did I wear this pink shirt? In order to shut that off, the solution is to completely focus on the other person. And in sales, it's listening and how you can help that person versus, you know, they're probably self-conscious about their pink shirt too. You know, they're probably like, why did I wear a blue shirt today? You know? And understanding that we're all really, whether you're talking to an executive of a, you know, Fortune 10 company or, you know, the gas station attendant, like we all have similarities that make every conversation human to human.
Yes. You know, there's so much there to unpack, Jess. We could like do a dissertation on this, which is for a lot of people who quote unquote think of themselves as introverts, it's much easier for them to advocate on someone else's behalf than it is on their own behalf. So if you are able to shift focus to your audience, that can be a super helpful tool. So how do you shift focus? How do you make sure that you are, instead of intrinsic, extrinsic? How are you allowing that room or that moment to inform you? Now, that might be very helpful for some people. That also might be difficult for some people because a lot of sales are monologues, right? Oftentimes we'll go into these rooms and our scene partners aren't the people in the room. They ain't giving us much. So that's why we developed the game.
Okay.
That's why we developed this thing, because oftentimes your scene partner actually will be your slides.
I was just going to ask you, so how does this help us get better at all of that? Okay, cool.
Your deck.
You read my mind.
Yeah, look at that. So I often think
this is like an example of a slide, guys.
Yes. So this is
I was part of the Kickstarter, by the way.
What is it?
I was part of your Kickstarter, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Jess. You were. So that was a picture of an empty toilet paper, and it has the letters ROLL with periods after them, meaning it's probably an acronym. So if I were to then explain to you this theory that I'm coming up with, I might say, look, sometimes you go to reach for your scene partner and they're not there, just like a hotel bathroom when you're trying to get ready for a talk. And then you're like, you know what, it might be a good idea for me to use the facilities. And then boom, there's no roll of toilet paper there. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to remember obvious laugh lines. What are your ROLL? What are your remembering obvious laugh lines? How do you enjoy yourself? What in your deck is bringing you joy? What story have you created or part of the pitch that really taps into why you got into this? What about it is super important? How are you going to find your way back to the hive? How are you going to just with smell and joy and honey back inside of your tail, come back to your queen bee and say, I nailed the sale. I got it because I was myself. I flew in a way that only I could fly. And we break this into different categories. So you have to think of this as a pie, right? Where are we dividing our pie? And how is each person really employing what it is that's true to themselves? Are they being the troll that they were born to be? Are they maybe a fairy? Or are they actually a dragon who wants to just spread their wings and spit fire in that room? Well, the fire you should be spitting is authentic fire. It should be true to who you are and enjoyable to you. So if you tell your own dragon story about how you hatched out of an egg and then were raised by this lovely girl on a farm to make popcorn, that true story releases endorphins in your brain that actually trigger chemicals that are sympathetic, empathetic machines. Those chemicals are picked up by the people in the room, and they too release similar amounts of endorphin of that chemical compound as to what you are releasing.
Okay, last one.
The last one is, how do you make sure that not only you're servicing who you authentically are, the bird that you are, this beautiful canary with feathers that are yellow and green,
the lion head,
able to be the lion or the tiger that you need to be in the room. So the key to it is to put stories about yourself or about things that you care about in there, because then you are talking about something that matters to you, and you're not making it impingent upon the people in the room thinking that they need to care. If you care, they will care. The death knell for inspiration is to try to be inspiring. The way to be inspiring is to be inspired. So I was enjoying these cards. They inspired me. And hopefully by doing that, paying honor to that feeling in me, the people listening or watching this will be inspired.
I love you. You make me laugh.
Yay.
Right. So tell them about so they could just order this on your site, right? We have a special promo code for them under there. And what do they do with this when they get it?
So
like they should do it with their teams and have fun, or is it like
absolutely they can go to our website, which is speechlessinc.com. So speechlessinc.com. There's a tab that says games, and inside of that tab they can go to a sales launch code for you, and that sales launch code, it has a special code that you need to put underneath of that, and that is JPM. So when you enter the letters JPM, it'll give you a 20% discount to buy this game. And this game, when you get it, you will set it up. And it will involve, these three major game mechanics. And after you set it up and get it going, it's about getting reps in. All of this ultimately is exposure therapy, which to this day, in almost all lines of psychiatry, of psychology, the only way to ever overcome something is through experiential, small, incremental dosages to your fear. If you want to go swimming with sharks, you don't jump into the Pacific and swim with sharks right away. You go to a scuba pool, a tank, and learn how to do scuba diving.
Right.
Go and you are at an aquarium and you see the sharks, and then you go and get into a cage and there might not be any sharks, but you keep getting closer and closer and closer, and you're going to be swimming with sharks before you know it, because you have 3 slides and they're completely random and you'll have no idea what's about to come up. And so that's what is on the deck. You've got these 3 cards, and then you pick a topic. Okay, this person is giving it's a charity fundraiser, which is definitely something you have to do when you're asking for money, right? This is a charity fundraiser. And the charity you are raising money for is called the Inflatable Church. It is purple, and the suggestion matches.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So that's how you know. And now you have to use these 3 slides to raise money for the Inflatable Church.
Okay, team, we're totally doing this on our group coaching calls. We're going to have a team. What's the point? Virtual, because everything we do is virtual. We'll have to figure it out. And I think we'll probably do it like once every 6 weeks, right? Because we go through presentation. And once every 6 weeks, we'll do like a group one, and then they'll all get their own, and it'll be a party. It'll be so much fun. This is a huge, I'm so thankful for you coming on, because this is a huge stickler with people who aren't comfortable being on stage. I think is the number one fear over dying, right?
You'd rather be
larger than dying is public speaking.
Yeah, Seinfeld said, you'd rather be in the box than giving the eulogy.
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, I think I was a born presenter and performer. I love the attention.
I think you were raised in a family where performance was just a natural aspect of living. Like, we're Italians, right? So there's a certain amount of neural networking that was created at a very young age in your house, especially around your dad, the kind of person he is, and your mom, the kind of person she is, and all of your siblings. Like, there was something in you that was created in that environment that helped you to have these mental pathways, these synaptic connections that were strong for you to feel comfortable doing this. Not everybody has that.
Right. And you and I both come from large families too, right? There's four boys, right? And with us is 4 girls and 1 boy. And I think you learn, you got to be loud or no one's going to hear you ask for the second serving of pasta, you know?
That's right.
You know, let your voice be heard. So thank you so much for coming on. I think those tips that you gave were so awesome. I know people are really going to take them right now and take them into their next sales presentation and really kill it. And I think, you know, I'm thankful that you emphasized how important it is to practice, even within this concept of improv, this notion of practicing and creating habits that are, you know, will get you where you want to go more predictably. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We're going to sign off from the Monday morning meeting. Bye, guys. We will see you next week. I'm here. I'm on your side, and I want to see you win. Bye. It's the Monday Morning Motivator with Magooch.